Howdy again, this is Jarl Stewart from Dansk Vikinger. As you saw in the previous video on the history of certain Viking Age weapons, the axe was a prevalent force on the battlefield. And that cannot be understated in the slightest. The axe was very versatile, everything like that. In the previous video, I explained a whole lot about it. But what we're going to do in this video is how does that knowledge from the actual history tie into Viking Age reenactment. And one of the ways is that we use axes on our blunted steel combat quite often. Not as often as I would like to see, based on the statistics in the previous video, but often enough that everybody should know some basic skills about the axe. Now for here, this is also going to be a video on how to haft your axe and maintain your axe, because the axe is wonderful. It's relatively cheap for a reenactor to get a hold of or even make. The one problem that people face with the axe is just not knowing how to haft them properly so that they stay in combat readiness, and not knowing how to maintain that combat readiness. So we're going to begin with some basics on how to do it. First, my recommendation for creating a good reenactment axe is to get yourself a nice hickory sledgehammer handle. Now everybody's like, oh, sledgehammer, why not an axe handle? Well, an axe handle was curved in ways in which we have not seen in axe handles from the Viking Age. As far as my research goes, I'll be happy to be proven wrong. But as far as I've seen, most of them were straight. Another thing, they come very closely shaped to the type of axe haft holes that we see in reenactment, which is almost round, but with more of a teardrop shape, but very small in comparison to modern axe heads, which are very thick. This is not very thick. So I'm going to give you guys kind of a look at it. You know, bigger than a quarter, about an inch wide, everything like that. Those are the type of axe hafts from the past. So a sledgehammer handle is pretty dang good at that already. So there will be minimum carving. And when I say hickory, I know it's not a Viking Age material, but here in America, that is our most common material. And on top of that, it'll keep your axe from splintering and all sorts of stuff that you don't want it to do. This one hickory handle that I have right here, I actually got that 4 years ago. And this is the second time I will have to have rehafted it. And this time was just done just a couple days ago. So first, what you want to do is you want to take your axe haft, and if you have these little tear nuggets right here, you want to make sure that you don't use that side for this portion, but what you want to do is you want to take the more flat side, put it on your sledge handle, just like that, and then you want to trace the inside of this on there. So you got a vague profile, okay? And yes, I know, when you shave off, when you are shaving up, you shave so that you eliminate that line. The reason being is because you actually want the axe to travel down the haft so that there's a portion sticking out. And I'll show you why in just a moment. But once you have that all figured out, this is already pre-shaved because, again, I'm just rehafting it. So one process that you can do for Viking Age reenactment in America is you can just beat on it. Now, if you have floors and everything like that, you're the only one in your building, you know, you don't want to do this if you're in a apartment complex, because you'll get, somebody will call on you within the first couple taps because it's going to be loud. But if this is your own home, you want a nice flat piece of wood to do it with. Now, the video process for me kneeling down and doing it and everything like that, it doesn't look as good. So I'm going to use this stool to make it so that the video is more visible. But also, you can take that flat wood outside to concrete if you live in an apartment complex and do it there. But once you get that nice and shaved down, and you can basically almost fit it halfway the width of the haft, you're pretty much ready to put it on. Now what you do is you would just start with the back. It's the easiest, okay? Once you see the axe start to rise up, you hit the front. Once you see the back start to rise up, hit the back. Once you see the front rise up, hit the front, back, front. Back and front, okay? Two hammers I like to use for this are the ball peen, or if you're skilled with it, the sheet metal hammer has a nice claw that you can aim pretty well, has mass so you don't have to swing very hard. But even given this, I'm not swinging absolutely very hard on this. So I'm just giving it nice little taps, okay? Until I feel it's snug, like I can't break it loose with just my hand wiggling it, okay? Now, you make sure that your alignment is exactly what you want it to be, okay? Make sure that's still not loose. Then, what you are wanting to do is you will drive a wedge, a metal wedge, into the wood. You can also put copper, well, what I like to use is pennies for the copper, into the sides to give it that full profile. One thing that may have happened during the hafting process is what I call the point of the haft, which is right here, because it's vaguely a teardrop. The point will often have no material in there. So you can take some basic wooden slivers, everything like that, beat them in there with the hammer and get them all, stuck in there with some wood glue. You also want to make sure that you are wood gluing this when you get it on. Right now I'm just showing the technique. The wood glue just makes it all sorts of a mess, and I don't really feel like getting all bogged down in the sticky part of the portion. So I'm just going to show you the basics. Now, as you can see already, just by hitting it down, you can see some of the edges of the wood that I've nicked start to come over. Now, what I like to do to give it just that little bit of extra, once I've driven the wedge in to here, I already have one in there that I'm planning on using here in just a second again, but what I like to do is actually start striking purposefully the corners of these to bring them down so that it kind of mushroom clouds over the metal. The reason for this is that you are actually creating a wooden rivet. That will help keep the axe in place. Now, as you're doing this, it's going to expose your center wedge that you put in there, the metal wedge. So you want to make sure that while you're doing this, every so often, strike that wedge down. Okay? This will help you keep your axe nice and tight together. And basically you do that until you feel comfortable with how it's all together. I've done this several times, so I'm pretty comfortable with how it is right now. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take a file and file off all the ugly edges of your little mushroom clouded wood so that you don't have to have that catching on people's clothes and everything like that. And on top of that, you picking it up, getting splinters and whatnot. So that is your basic way to have to take care of your axe as a Viking Age reenactor. Again, there will likely be another video about Viking Age reenactment and axes, but for this video, I'm just going to show you how to haft your axe. Again, thank you guys for watching. Can you please subscribe and like this video? And if you have anything to add to this topic, that your own personal quirks or anything like that, please leave it in the comments. We love new information, and that's what these videos are all about. You guys have a good day, all right?